You know, we're hearing reports of people wanting to self-deport, and then once they get fingerprinted, they are charged with criminal reentry, which is a year minimum jail time. And it's more and more looking like the goal is incarceration and not deportation. And I can only assume that's because there's more money in incarceration than in deportation.
Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup.
This is Ashley with Status Coup.
On the ground.
In Philadelphia.
Flint, Michigan. East Palestine, Ohio. Please support the leading independent news outlet on the ground.
Covering what the corporate media covers up.
Please tell us about the private property signs.
Private property signs were just installed 2 days ago. And I obviously take issue with that because this was public land. I've parked on that road with my children and hiked and enjoyed the Everglades. And for us, we no longer have access. And I believe that the governor was somebody who supported Amendment 2 that we passed, which is our now constitutional right to hunt and fish. And hunting deer season opened, I think today, in the South District. And to me, I don't think hunters have access to this property anymore, or fishermen.
So like before all this went in, you could go down that road?
Oh, absolutely. These gates have never been closed. I mean, literally in Betty Osceola's entire lifetime, elders in the community, those gates have never been closed. Yes, you've not been able to get onto the airstrip. There's been fencing around that small little portion, but this is a much larger property that has rock ponds or pools that were, from when they first started this project, people that don't have boats, airboats or swamp buggies, those are places they can hike out and have access to the beautiful Everglades and be off of 41. And again, fish, hike, hunters have always used that land.
What do you think Miami-Dade's goal was in creating the jetport beyond it getting voted down?
Well, after it was called the Everglades Jetport Pact, and once that fell through, the articles that I've read from back then refer to it as Miami-Dade quietly purchasing the property here. Because apparently these were 32 separate lots that comprise what we now know to be the Dade Collier Training and Transition Facility.
Yeah.
Or airport. It's very difficult to find any of the property deeds or the titles or any of the transactional information. So I welcome anybody that would like to do that because, Collier has record of this, but not all the way back to its purchase. And so I would be very interested in seeing what the property deeds say to this because community members here and elders all say that this was never supposed to be developed. Nothing was ever supposed to happen here.
In the fight, like how do you think the city actually feels about this space? Do you think they want to let the government, the state, the feds have it?
I think that initially we saw Mayor Levine Cava writing letters, asking questions and asking for transparency and access. But at the same time, we also see reports where she said she's been in negotiation for 2 years with the state and wants to sell this property.
So speaking out of two sides of the same mouth.
Yes, very much so. And I think that, again, the property doesn't belong to her, it belongs to the taxpayers. So I think it would be interesting to ask them what they would like to do with it. And, is she planning on just selling it to anybody? Or is this for conservation? But I would want the Miccosukee tribe, personally, who has expressed interest in buying it for conservation, to be the ones that do so. Because at this point, it's hard for me to even trust the National Park Service. Personally, I haven't heard them vocally oppose this. And
especially under the current administration.
No,
the National
of course,
Park Service.
Yes, and that's another fear of mine. What's not to say that Senator Mike Lee in Utah wouldn't go turn to his governor and say, look what they're doing in Florida. Just declare a state of emergency, write an executive order that declares a state of emergency on immigration, and we can take whatever land we want. So my fear is that other counties and other states are all going to be replicating
to create a developmental cash grab.
Yes, because again, the two biggest private prison donor recipients are Donald Trump and Rick Scott, and I think DeSantis is 6th on that list or something. But again, from what I've learned about the private prison industry, it's incredibly lucrative. And when you combine that with these new laws that criminalize re-entry, we're hearing reports of people wanting to self-deport, and then once they get fingerprinted, they are charged with criminal re-entry, which is a year minimum jail time. And it's more and more looking like the goal is incarceration and not deportation. And I can only assume that's because there's more money in incarceration than in deportation.
Support this critically important on-the-ground reporting as a Status Coup member and get great perks. Become a member right here.
And I called the governor's office last week and I asked when we would have access to this property again that we've always had access to. And I was told by the governor's office that this is a federal project and that DHS is in charge. And because of that, we probably wouldn't have access. I was told to contact Scott or Moody's office, Rick Scott or Ashley Moody. And I think all fingers point to the federal government, or the state is certainly trying to make it seem that way, but we do have a constitutional right to hunt and fish. And I would like to know how this impacts that.
So, was there a time, you mentioned it earlier, that this was going to become part of Big Cypress?
Yes, well, this Big Cypress was created after the Jetport proposal in the 60s and 70s was defeated. They wanted to build the world's largest airport that would have been 5 times larger than JFK. And that's why we have that runway. The runway wasn't wanted, the community stopped it. Then Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and Arthur Marshall and Nathaniel Reed and these legends of conservation in our state. And so with the help of the Gladesmen and the Miccosukee and the Seminole, they stopped that project. And because of the environmental report that Leopold did at the time, which was the first of its kind, President Nixon created the EPA and also established our nation's first national preserve, Big Cypress National Preserve, which ensconces this whole property. And you'll notice when you come around the turn at Loop Road, there's a sign that says you're now entering Big Cypress National Preserve. So this is very much a part of that. But
because Big Cypress surrounds the jetport.
Yes. This should be a part of Big Cypress.
It's fascinating because it's like almost like this island of
intentional
Miami-Dade
yes.
property.
And how often do you hear of counties buying property in another county?
And in the middle of a federal preserve. Is it
yes.
a state or federal preserve?
It is a federal preserve. It was our nation's first national preserve. And, 6 miles, we've got Everglades National Park. You have Water Conservation Area 3A. You've got the Miccosukee tribal lands. So if you look at the correct maps that show all of those areas, this is in the heart of all of these conservation areas, which is why we have, endangered bonneted bats and panther and bear and the mud snakes and the indigo snakes and all of the animals that thrive on the night silence, darkness, and the things that they need out here. And unfortunately, we know that they're now being displaced based on footage from game cams that people have been sharing. We've seen bear near the L28 canal that are never normally there. But the displacement of these species, a lot of them endangered and protected species, is terrible. I mean, this is the area they're supposed to be in, and the government has just barged right in with no concern or consideration and have not conducted any sort of environmental impact studies on the effects that all of this is having. And, we all have questions and concerns. And, this community, I think, is also very concerned as we're in hurricane season, what the evacuation plan is, not just for the people, but for the hazardous materials that they have on site.